Enraged, bellows at the boy, then a sharp slap in the face. This deliberate, calculated harshness is part of an extraordinary new treatment for mentally crippled children. It is based on the old-fashioned idea that the way to bring up children is to reward them when they're good, punish them when they're bad. At the University of California in Los Angeles, a team of researchers is applying the precept to extreme cases. They've taken on 3 boys and a girl with a special form of schizophrenia called autism.
What we have done is to actively reward behavior which we judge to be socially appropriate. And we have not rewarded, and here at NPI we have explored actual discomfort for the patient if he engaged in behaviors which we judge to be socially inappropriate.
I'm an autistic teenager who has been forced into attending court-ordered applied behaviour analysis therapy, or ABA. These are the experiences that led me to run into traffic to get away from it. From what I've experienced with behaviour therapy, I feel like the RBT therapists who want to help me actually belittle me, make me feel incapable of doing what I can do, and constantly push me to do tasks as simple as flashcards, analogue clock quizzes on an iPad, and easy reading comprehension way below my ability level. They make me take notes in a notebook on how many I got right or wrong. They even collect data on how many times I apologise. I feel like a lab rat in a maze, and the cheese at the end is when I get to go home. I don't know what I'm doing there. I've asked them what were my goals, and they said they always change until I'm 18. This was devastating, because I thought if I played along and tried, I would graduate out of ABA.
I think throughout history, there have been dominant ways of thinking about things or doing things in societies, including in science. And I believe that ABA is a dinosaur. It is based on outdated ideas in science, the more innovative ways of thinking about the brain and cognition and behavior and personhood and identity. These ways of thinking have not yet imbued our thinking at the societal discourse level about autism. And I think that that is a terrible disservice and a damaging state of affairs. So I think we're living through a time of change. We're living through a time of reflection. I think we're living through a time of a deep need for paradigm shift with respect to ABA.
When you get diagnosed as like an adult, the first thing that the person who diagnosed me was like, go and read like stories of other autistic people, and there's no cure or anything you need to do. Obviously, you just need to learn how to live, and to do that, you talk to other autistic people. We don't need non-autistic people to stand as a barrier in these organizations between us, as if we can't talk to each other.
ABA was actually the precursor to what later became gay conversion therapy. And so it all has the same root, this awful, evil man behaviorist, I believe named Ivor Lovaas, who believed that autistic people were not human. And he even blatantly said that. He believed that, we didn't have thoughts or feelings. And that's the evil behaviorism. It's all about, you're just your behaviors. You don't have thoughts, you don't have feelings, you don't have complex motivations for what you do. You don't have intrinsic motivations. You are just a combination of behaviors to be rewarded or punished. And some of Lovaas's punishments were especially brutal and violent, and some really violent ABA approaches are still practiced today, especially at the Judge Rotenberg Center with the constant electrocution, which is incredibly disturbing. Modern ABA practitioners will often claim, oh, well, ABA has changed. But there are multiple problems with that. Like, first of all, their organization still holds the Judge Rotenberg Center in high regard and LOVAS in high regard. And the other problem is, even if you're rewarding someone for behaving a certain way, it causes the same problems. You don't do things due to your own motivation. You need some sort of external source saying, do this, do that, don't do this. And I've heard that with enough ABA abuse, you learn that your body doesn't belong to you, your life doesn't belong to you. You do not act without someone else telling you how to act. And it causes PTSD. It makes kids more vulnerable to sexual predators because they don't learn to assert themselves, and they learn that their bodies don't belong to them. And it's just all completely disturbing. And like gay conversion and trans conversion therapy uses the same philosophy and techniques, just replace autistic behaviors with supposedly gay or transgender behaviors or gender nonconforming behaviors.
I think my main contribution and maybe will be just to connect us to struggles to end trans conversion therapies, which it's a struggle that I was very involved in here in Ontario, which is a province in Canada that I live in, and was involved in the sort of legislative process to have that banned. And I have sort of written about that in connection to ABA and to my hope that we see a ban on ABA in our lifetime. We're farther behind here in Canada, so I'm saying in our lifetime.
I am autistic. I'm deaf. I am 4th generation Indigenous Penobscot from Maine. I was the first openly autistic person elected to government in the United States. And I also run a social media site called the Autistic OT. But professionally, where a lot of my work lies is pediatric mental health. And so I do a lot of identity development work, but I've also worked inpatient and in community settings, and really to bring out the importance of being able to do what you want to do in order to figure out who your identity is. And that kind of goes against what ABA is. I have worked with ABA in the field. I have taught with ABA, and as a mental health practitioner, I have serious concerns. So I have also dedicated my life to joining Tara and all the amazing advocates out there who are working to dismantle the system, because that's the only option.
That's the bizarre thing about it, is not only is it not banned, but it's actively funded by, I like the New Zealand government is currently funding, and it's prescribed in the autistic guidelines that ABA is the preferred method to use on children. So it's not like gay conversion therapy that's kind of like hidden away and shushed about, and it's a minority of people doing it. It's like the widely accepted thing to do, and also it is still the same principles.
And my specific concern with ABA and any compliance-based program is that it grooms out those opportunities for self-actualization. And in fact, the individual experiences something called identity foreclosure, which we know in the literature, again, anxiety, depression, trauma, identity foreclosure occurs when somebody else has determined your identity for you. And in any type of conversion therapy, that is the goal, is to turn somebody else into the version they want. And we also know that, so we're talking about this from a pediatric standpoint of identity development. But if you look at the lived experiences of autistic adults who have gone through some type of, whether it was conversion, therapy itself, those of us like myself who grew up queer in a religious environment, people who grew up in very fundamentalist or very strict families, we know what that's like to have those demands placed on us so that we cannot show our authentic self. We know from the literature and from the experience of autistic adults that what ends up happening is a lot of mental unwellness, not because we're autistic, but because of the disconnect and the dysregulation of living in society that doesn't want us. And so one of the things that ABA is notorious for is grooming away those unwanted behaviors. Well, I want them because behavior is communication. And how are we going to learn ourselves and be self-actualized so that we can self-determine, so that we can self-advocate without this information? So any place that doesn't allow rebellion, I don't like this, it hurts, I don't want to be, I can't be who I am, I can't move the way I want to do. No, thank you.
Okay, accessibility, that's Article 9. People have the right to support. This is important from various different angles. It's important because it's about not changing me, but giving me what I need. So under this accessibility clause, which is a long one, it gives a lot of examples. Like, for example, it mentions Braille there for deaf, for blind people. It would be if deaf adults say that when I was a child, I was denied, even though I was deaf from birth, I was denied the right to sign language, and they tried to force me to speak and force me to lip read and everything. And we understand that the difference is, there's a difference when people became deaf later in life, because sometimes they actually do prefer those mechanisms. But for people who are deaf from birth, it's different. So it is unfair to think that you're benevolently helping these children by forcing them to speak. You should be giving them something which allows them access to communication, which is the sign language of the country. Otherwise, you're denying their rights. So that's how accessibility is different from what ABA tries to do. ABA tries to change the person to fit in with society. And I'm not even talking about the harsh ABA that tries to make you pass as normal. I'm talking about ABA which tries to obliterate autistic coping mechanisms for a thing and replace it with a non-autistic coping mechanism. So if you are self-harming, I understand that that could be a problem, but there are autistic ways of dealing with it, and ABA is not the thing. Okay. So we need accessibility, we need support, we need autistic ways of doing things, just like deaf people need deaf ways of communicating. It doesn't mean making them like someone else. So that's a pretty important clause. I also earlier mentioned that ABA guys often will take away communication rights. In other words, you get PICS, picture exchange communication system. You don't get other kinds of picture cards. You have to have this ABA-based method. You are not allowed to use pointing to a keyboard or to a letterboard, and you're not allowed to have training for your motor skills. You must take the communication methods which we say you must have. The interesting thing about the people who really strongly advocate for ABA is they never really have anybody, autistic people, who are endorsing, or they very rarely have autistic people who are endorsing what they do.
So many things that I want to echo and also support, like the self-determination and, centering the protest. How else do you teach self-advocacy, or how would you claim to teach self-advocacy and then not encourage the protest, not encourage no, not encourage this is where I'm uncomfortable? right? Because it's not about our kids fitting in, right? It's about us fitting in around them, right? I don't want these like shaved off people trying to fit into my classroom. It's not my classroom. I think that a neuro-inclusive, I love that word, classroom, you know, it's gonna dismantle power dynamics, right? My kids and I are gonna collaborate, right? Supporting needs isn't speaking for what you think they need, right? I'm teaching self-advocacy. So supporting their needs means consensually collaborating, right? Consensually challenging their potential and encouraging their strengths, kind of in this like simultaneous balance. Because you have a lot of students, and I want to speak, and I know that we're all probably familiar with terms like trauma informed and things like that, but it's really weird and hard and sad to have a first grader come into class who's already totally traumatized by the classroom. Like, that's why when I introduce children to this classroom, I tell them that, you know, this is I don't need to tell them, they'll figure it out. It's a safe place with an even safer place to hide. I think a neuro-inclusive classroom has a place to hide. We've called it the Nook, we've called it the Fort, but as a classroom, we've worked together and we've designed a safe place to run to. And for students that I think, and this is where we kind of draw in the juxtaposition of the problematic situation with ABA, is that we know ABA addresses behavior as like a function of either getting something or escaping something. And we know it's so much more than that.
Both touch on is the fact that it's based on external behavior. So there's never any consideration to your autonomy or your like personal feelings or your motivations for doing the things that you do. So at the dinner table was basically peak ABA for me. Sit still, don't like use this fork, don't talk too much, like don't watch TV, don't do this. And yeah, I had a stepmother that just used to stare at me for the entire time that I ate, waiting for me to make an error. And then I'd be punished. So yeah, ended up with eating issues, surprisingly, which is another thing that's super common. But yeah, I mean, it basically teaches you that you should live for other people. That is the biggest danger for it, is that you don't matter. And like most of us who found out and later in life that we were autistic, you basically have a crisis of conscience. A crisis of identity, because you're like, wait, who am I? Like, I've been living for everyone else for so long. Like, and then you realize that this is what's happened. And yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking hearing like women in their 60s going, I don't know if I'll actually ever know who I am, and it's because they've been robbed of their agency. So I think it is completely inhumane, no matter how positive it looks from the outside.